and welcome to Quality of Life Radio, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's Quality of Life show. Of course, we're your hosts, Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith, the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of Big Blend Radio and TV Magazine and Parks and Travel Magazine. I used the crazy word. I probably shouldn't do that, Nancy. We have a therapist joining us. So many of us have heard about the 5 love languages, but is there a realistic alternative for the messy and serious conversations that arise in every relationship? We're very excited to have David and Julie Bulitt join us on today's show to talk about their new book, The 5 Core Conversations for Couples, that provides helpful advice to navigate marriage's tricky and emotional situations. They've been together for over 33 years. Julie is a family therapist, and David is one of DC's premier divorce lawyers. So this is a very candid read, and it just gets right down into it. And it's actually, there's some humor in this too. So I encourage you to get their book. It's out in February 2020. So go to their website, thebullits.com, and that's Bullitts, thebullits.com. Of course, Amazon, all those great places. But welcome, David. How are you?
I am great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and Julie, welcome. Am I allowed to say we're a crazy mother-daughter team?
Absolutely, because crazy is normal for me.
Oh, good. Good.
I say everybody's a little crazy, including the sanest people. Everybody has a little bit of crazy, so it's all good.
I like that.
I don't.
Uh-oh.
She excludes me from that. Crazy.
That's not true.
Why don't you get? Here it is. Do you want to come sit on my couch? This is going to be cool. I find it interesting. You've been together for over 30 years. Of course, you're parents as well. 4 daughters. That's like, oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, wow. That's wow. And been through a lot together. Obviously, challenges in life. Every relationship isn't going to be smooth sailing. But it's interesting that you've actually written a book together. Julie, what was that like? Because I know, David, you've written novels before. You're also writing magazines. But Julie, what was it like to work together on a project like this?
Well, it was really a lot of fun, and it went pretty smoothly. So we have a kind of an interesting writing process. First of all, I'm not a great writer. So what would happen with this book is we've taken conversations that we've had and topics that we wanted to cover, and I basically would write something that would look not terrific, and I would send it to David, and he would take what I was trying to say, he would rewrite it, and he really, he gets me after 33 years, so he knows what I was trying to say, and he makes it sound really good. And so the writing process was a lot of back and forth together like that. My strengths are creativity and ideas, and his strengths are more, making sure people understand what we're talking about. So it was a really kind of fun way to work together. And we spend a lot of time together, and this book, helped, create a fun activity for us to both collaborate on.
I think it's also interesting with both of your careers and how that connects, and it gives 2 sides. It's obviously man, woman, husband, wife. That there's like the side of go see Julie before you go see David.
Yeah. Well, right, and that's a tagline in our book that actually came from a trainer of ours that we work out with, Tammy, and she was having a conversation with another client that was at the gym, and she was talking with him and me, and she's like, "Hey, you need to listen to Julie so you don't need David." And that was a really great sort of concept and metaphor for the book. So yeah. It was really.
She was in my office a couple of weeks later, so it didn't work out all that.
Oh,
no, that's not true.
I was going to say, no. Well, I know, because you're really straight up in this book. But David, it sounds like in your career, you like it. Divorce is I mean, I did it after 6 months. Like, boom, I'm not doing this. That was a mistake. Get
Yeah.
it over with. Out. You know.
Right.
But
Yeah.
some of this stuff gets really messy and can drag out. And in some of the stories in the book, you really let it show that this is, and it affects you as a person handling this with, going through it
Yeah.
with your clients. But divorce comes from many reasons, including money is one of the things too. You talk about
Huge.
money. And that being
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of, as you saw, there's a lot of pieces in each of these sections, and the financial, the money section that we sort of borrow from the old OJ song and call it money, money, money. They say money's the root of all evil. I'm not sure that that's true, but certainly it does create a lot of conflict within couples and people who come to see me, and certainly I imagine people come to see Julie. And frankly, and we talk about it in our book, it created issues in our own relationship, where we had to make changes to what we did, because sometimes we basically had our head in the sand when things weren't as good as we thought they should be, and figured we'd work our way out of it, and then we didn't, and we had to make some drastic changes. But we were fortunate in that for the most part we found ourselves on the same page, and people who come to me, by the time they've gotten there, they're way off the same page. And money certainly is one of those places where they're not together, and where sometimes, as Julie pointed out in one of the sections in the book, sometimes it comes from what you're used to having growing up. Folks who didn't have a lot find themselves in a relationship with someone who had more, or who was more fortunate growing up, and so therefore the way they look at money, the way they look at saving it and spending it is different, and it causes conflict. It really does, and it shows up in my office pretty much daily.
And the one thing too is, Nancy and I've talked about this. Women of a certain age were kind of like sheltered from the money side. I know I have an acquaintance who was actually a business coach, and she got divorced, and she's a therapist too. And all of a sudden, she was, thought she was doing a very successful business, and she just, kept going, and all of a sudden found herself bankrupt. And it was because she just didn't have that, like she didn't even really know how to write a check, and people, you know what I mean? There's a generation of where women were kind of like shielded from being part of the money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a piece in the book that we call "Learn to Drive Before You're 65" that actually came from Julie's own experience, and talks about her grandmother, right, Jules?
Yeah. So my grandmother, who was actually she actually went to law school, but she stopped driving when she got married to my grandfather, and he drove, and she did not know how to drive at all. I guess she had a license at some point or drove early on, and then he did all the driving, and then he had a stroke, and she had to learn to drive. She actually took driving lessons at 65, and that was, for me, an important lesson in my life, is not to let one person do all of something. You need, if there's a primary driver, like when we go out, David usually drives. He's maybe a better driver than me. So I'm giving him a little.
Cross out the maybe.
So anyway,
but go ahead.
Maybe, but I always would make sure that that I'm driving, and the same thing with money. It really is astounding to me that some people, and yes, we sort of talked about women as, sort of generalizing, don't know how, where their money is, or how much things cost, or how to pay a bill. So we've always, talked about making sure that we can do kind of a little bit of everything in the relationship, whether it's money. And then also we talk about in the book, the ponytail test, where through the years since we had 4 girls, I would randomly make David do a ponytail on one of the girls. And that was for me to know that if something happened to me, that he could get the girls out the door looking okay. So, just that concept of don't let, someone take over completely and be in the dark about, whether it's money, ponytails, cleaning, laundry, cooking. We really feel like there needs to be a little bit of a balance
Oh,
in those, in many, many areas.
I love that because I mean, even like Nancy and I were saying, your book goes with us too as a mother-daughter relationship. We just don't, we don't have sex with each other, everybody, but
It's good.
That's good.
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
But
Yeah.
there's a partnership because there's obviously our business, but we're also friends and we travel full time together and sometimes have to sleep in the same hotel room. And we don't want that because we do want our space. But Nancy, we always have that thing where we have to know both sides of the business. And like she does the books and everything, but I go get the money. Like I have to go out and get it, and then I bring it to her, and then she sits and she does that thing, and you talk about it in the book. Like, okay, you need to know this, that, the other, and sometimes like, oh, I need to know everything, and then I look at it and I go, really, do I want to? But she does. It'll be wine time. Sometimes it is the bourbon that needs to happen when it comes to the financial conversation. But she's like, you will sit down and you will listen to me about what's going on, right, Nancy?
Well, it's important, because things happen really fast in this day and
age. You have to know. You have to know. You have to know in any relationship. And you're right. It goes outside just a couple. The couple, the romantic partner couples relationship. And we have a chapter that says that's called "Don't Wait for the Repo Man." And that comes from a woman who I represented, who literally had no idea what was going on. She had a nice car. They had a nice house. They had a vacation house. Everything was fine. She went about her business. She charged her groceries. She got cash out. And then one day, she tells me this in the office. And then one day she hears a lot of noise, a lot of Spanish being spoken outside of her front door. And she looks out the window and her car's being repossessed. And it was only then that she comes to find out that it was, it was a big house of cards, that there was a lot of borrowing, that there wasn't a lot of paying. And, and people do, we all as humans, right, we tend to stick with what we're comfortable with, to focus on that and to live within that sort of area. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with money or talking about it, or don't even really care to know the ins and outs of how things are paid for and earned and that sort of thing. And clearly this person was one of those folks, and she learned a pretty expensive lesson as a result of it. So
wow. Yeah. It's it's interesting that people are different, so different. You're talking about the two of you working on a book together. And the first thing that came into my mind is, because I used to paint, I don't have time anymore, and I made my living as an artist. And one of the things that is really shocking is if somebody dares to touch your painting and try to help you with it. Like if you have an art teacher, and I used to teach art to students, adult students, not in the classroom. And one of the things was, if you were trying to show somebody like a certain brushstroke, if you touched their painting, they got really, really upset. So it's like people can write a book together, but artists cannot work on the same painting together normally. There's a different attitude, So I look at it and go,
as to what it should look like.
Yeah.
Right? Different vision.
Yeah. So how do you paint the same picture if you have two different visions?
Right. Yeah. I hear that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's unity. Some murals are done together with people, but so that's the only thing I can see on art. Yeah. But Nancy, you and your art business, you had to learn business from starting with your art business because someone else was trying to run it for you.
Well, yes, that's true. Yeah. I mean, I had the experience of waking up one day and seeing money that I thought I had wasn't there anymore. There you go. So I understand that lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an unpleasant one to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also when it comes down to, when people get married, I always wonder about this, like where's that conversation in the beginning of who's going to do what with the money, and then do you stash your own, like like I would always want my own account and my own stash, but then is that saying I should have, probably the prenup type then, and then are you really in it for the are you really in it for the marriage if you're thinking that way? So I want to go to you, David, on that as a divorce lawyer.
Sure.
Do you think people should have prenups and like separate bank accounts, or does that room romanticism?
I think well, certainly it does. I mean, let's be honest about it. Honey, I love you. Will you sign this first?
Yeah.
So let's be honest about it. Absolutely. It absolutely could affect, the romance and all the good feelings when you shove a contract. And you might want to have a lawyer take a look at it before you sign it, just in case we need it later, kind of a thing. When it comes to, and states have different laws, obviously, as to prenuptial agreements, their validity and enforceability and how to interpret them and so forth. And what you generally see with people who do have prenuptial agreements are folks who either come into the relationship with money, and sometimes that's older couples, someone they've had careers, or even maybe a second marriage. So you see more of that than you do with younger folks, or you see people who have, significantly more assets going in as opposed to their soon-to-be partner who doesn't have as much. So that's the analysis you want to take, and you also want to know what the law is in your state. So because in some states it doesn't really matter if you have a prenup, if you own something before your marriage. It's in Maryland it's called non-marital property. It's called other things in other states. So sometimes a prenup can be helpful, and sometimes it's not necessarily something you have to have depending upon your circumstances. But when you talk about the separate bank accounts and things like that, I have people who I've spoken with, and they've had separate accounts from their spouse for however many years it's been, and it's something that has always gotten under their skin. She would never put our money together in a joint account. I had to have my own account. I don't understand. He pays this, I pay that, she pays, and that's something. And you're 100% right. That's a conversation, no matter where you are in life. If you're getting ready to embark on, some sort of a coupling, whether it's marriage or otherwise, and you ought to have a discussion about money. Are we going to have a joint account? What are we paying from it? What are we paying separately? And people don't have that discussion. A lot of people are heads over heels. I didn't have any discussion about money with Julie. I just looked at her, and all I could do is keep looking at her. So I didn't want to talk about money. I want to talk about other things.
Yeah.
So,
And the good news for both of us is that we didn't have any money when we started together. I mean,
right.
we were both
there was nothing to prenup.
There was nothing. I had a car that was, paid for, and he had a car that was paid for, and that was about it. That was in terms of our assets.
Yeah.
But, it's an interesting question about separate money. And I have always kept a little bank account, like a little separate money in some fashion, just because I always felt like I needed a little bit of control if something happened, or really, if I wanted to buy a present for David, I felt like, do I really want to take it out of our joint account? So I've always kept a little bit of cash, in another account, whether it was a business that I had or, an account that just something. And I don't think that's a bad idea. And again, especially, for women and girls, we have 4 daughters. I would advise my daughters to always have a little money of their own, just so, if they want to do a gift, or they don't want to ask their husband, if they can get something. I don't know. I just think for me, a little bit of control, a little bit of money was helpful.
Yeah,
I always like to have control.
I think, is to be upfront about it. Yeah. Well, the key is to be upfront about it. The last thing somebody wants to do is come home and see a bank statement from an account that they didn't know existed, and there's $20,000 in there. It's like, where the hell, what's going on, kind of a thing. So it's one thing.
I'm sorry, but you would have been.
Account.
Yeah, but you would have been happy if I had an account that had 20,000. You would have said, "Oh,
I
goodness.
would." It's usually about $212. Yeah. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
well, this
exactly.
is the finance thing is important, but I also think a lot of when it comes to finance, for some people, fear is a big part of it. Do you see that a lot in your work, Julie, about relationships and conversations about the big things, whether it's sex, money, children, raising, that fear sometimes closes people down?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, hard conversations are hard conversations for a reason. Either you don't know how they're going to turn out, or it's uncomfortable. And, talking about money is uncomfortable. Talking about sex can be uncomfortable. Talking about, in-laws can be uncomfortable. So there's lots of hard conversations that people need to have. And I think one of the themes, or one of the, takeaways from the book is to have hard conversations, whether you do it in a playful way or you do it in a, let's sit down at the kitchen table and really talk seriously. But really, if you in your relationship aren't afraid to do the hard talks, I think it's, it's helpful, because sweeping things under the rug, gets you in trouble every time.
Then that'll send you to David.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes it has a lot to do with how you were raised, because I know in my family, the way I was brought up, especially because I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who is British, was British. Boy, there were things you were not allowed to discuss at all. And so, like, money was at the top of the list. It was not to be discussed in any way, fashion, form with anyone. And oh my gosh, what at school? What would you talk about at school? Now, you don't talk about family matters at school. So there was this closing off of who you could talk to about what subject, and it was really drilled in. And I think there's a generation that really went through those kinds of teachings that makes it hard to be open about some things. Because
we experienced that. We experienced that. What comes to mind for us is, issues that we had with one of our girls, and you've read about it. You see, we open ourselves up pretty good in this, or a lot in this book. And Julie's a talker, so Julie was always open to talking to folks about what was going on with our daughter and the problems that we were having, whether it was a different diagnosis or medication or hospitalization or running away or all that. For me, I just want to be left alone. I don't want to talk about it. I don't need to have a big discussion about it. She and I could talk about it, but the last thing I needed was the phone ringing and somebody saying, "Oh, how's it going?" And I just didn't want to do it. And sometimes it annoyed me that she wanted to talk so much about it with people, with other people, whoever they may be, whether it was sisters or mothers or friends or frankly the neighbor when she's getting mail, kind of a thing. But that was her way of dealing with it. And for me it was okay. It stays here. So it's a little, so for us it was a little bit of both of what you're talking about. Some of the more old school, let's not talk about it, versus my therapist wife, who's her whole life is built on talking.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And talking and listening.
Yeah. And the way that I process things is to talk about them. So, I mean, that would make sense. I'm a therapist, but that's just my personality as well.
Yeah. I think that's important. I think that's important for couples and to understand each other, and that Nancy and I are totally different about that too. And it's, and we do annoy each other. We really do.
Really?
Really?
He says no.
But no, I think the talking, the processing thing. Yeah, that's a really, because I think Nancy, you and I have that same thing of being different about how we process things, and I'm the social person.
Yeah, and well, do you remember, Lisa, you at one school you brought home an exercise book, and the teacher asked you to write down what was happening at home, and that was your assignment. And I'm like, oh no, you don't.
Don't tell her about martini time. No, but well, that's an odd thing too. But I think it's interesting, that part. And also, I think one thing you talk about a lot, Julie, in the book is making time out for as an individual, and then making time out for each other as a couple. And I think one of the big takeaways I thought of with that is, Julie, whether you're getting people to take that time out, but if you're having time out together, then aren't those really hard conversations easier to get to, because it's like you're practicing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not spending time together, I mean, I have clients that will say, I haven't seen or talked to my spouse in a couple of weeks, and I'm just astonished that happens. I mean, I know people work and they're busy and they travel even, but I'm like, really, you haven't had a conversation with your spouse about this, which is pretty important. So I do think we talk a lot about self-care in the book. I'm a really big proponent as a therapist of self-care. It's pretty much where I start with anybody that I meet with. You know, are you taking care of yourself? So physical health and mental health are really, you know, woven together. And so I work with people on the self-care and then the couple care, and that, you know, that sort of comes next level kinds of things. But yeah, you have to put the time into both. And I have an analogy that your relationship can't be like the elf on the shelf, where you just kind of take it out, you know, part of the year or when it's convenient or fun. It's not going to survive if you, you know, put your relationship on hold or think you can come back to it later. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. I say everybody needs to take more walks. We have a Facebook group, 1 hour walk, just to get people out and to take a walk, because if you're going to argue, it's really hard to do when you're walking downtown. Well, it'll be funny for everybody else to watch, but like if you're going to have an argument, maybe you're walking the street or you're out in nature, there's something that kind of, I don't know, there's something, maybe
tones
it's just
you down.
for us, that's what we do. We go take a hike and then we sit down and have champagne in nature. That's what we do.
I love that. I love it. No, that's great. And then, you know, walking and exercising and getting fresh air, there's all those other components that are really great. You know, the sun, if it's out, and, you know, the fresh air, and maybe the technology has been left or at least put away while you're walking, which is an important aspect that, you know, a lot of couples are getting distracted by technology, computers and cell phones, and you know,
I mean,
we're kind of all addicted.
We do. I mean, even just the other day, so Julie is in-house therapist at the Discovery Channel in Silver Spring, Maryland. And so she, you know, she left early, and then they had a holiday party. I had a meeting that I had to go to. So we didn't see each other from whatever it was, 6 or 6:30 in the morning until I was getting home at 9 or 9:30 that night. And I don't know whether she texted me or I texted her, was, you know, meet you for a, you know, nightcap when you get home kind of a thing, or when I get home. And just even that, you know, 10 or 15 minutes or half an hour, just sitting down, she's got a glass of wine, we're sitting on the couch, and, you know, just catching up on a few things. It doesn't even have to be that much. It's just the fact that you send, that's sort of a place, you know, a marker for us for the day. At least it was for me. Okay, when I get home, we'll hang out and talk a little bit. And we do a pretty good job, and have made especially in the last half of our marriage. I think it was, we had more difficulty finding that space and place early when our children were younger, and we were facing different kinds of stresses. But we do a pretty good job now of making sure that we make, even if that's what it is. The walks are great. We do the same thing. We've got 2 dogs, and we walk our dogs, and we go out in the woods and do that too. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
you touch in the book on the silent treatment.
Yep.
Nancy's looking at me from her other hotel room right now. She's looking at me. The silent treatment.
Yeah, I hate that.
Feel the look.
I'm really good at yelling one thing out, slamming a door, and you're not going to see me for another day. That's it. I'm off.
That is the worst. That is the worst thing. I hate that more than anything. And and the other thing is, after being married for 33 years and together before that, you know when it's coming.
Yeah.
You know, I know I said something, and I say it in the book. I'm really good at apologizing because I've had so much practice at it.
Yeah.
So I know I can see the look. I know the silent. I know the wave of silence. So I have to try to quickly jump out, stop, please don't do it, because it makes me just absolutely miserable. She knows that.
There's the intake of breath right before it counts. You can hear the huff, and I'm like, no.
And she knows I hate it, which is really bad.
That's why it's done.
It's like a button I can push. I can push it anytime.
And then Nancy does 20,000 emails. Quit with your BS. Get up. It starts funny. Angry, and then it gets nice, and then it's like, you know, come on now. And I'll just go, would you stop with the emails? You know, because her mother had a habit of mailing everybody stuff and getting, and really nailing everybody in the family and sending them to the wrong family member. But so she has this thing, and I'm like, you're being like grandma. She's like, don't you dare. So we have this thing. I'm like, you know, she's like, if you're going to do the silent treatment, you're getting the emails. And that's that. So it's like,
perfect. Perfect. A little balance of power there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. My mom did sit down one day and she wrote to all her kids, and she got everybody's, and she said mean things about each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
She really did, and she got the letters all mixed up. So I got the letter where she was talking about me. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah. And because Mike got the letter where she was talking about him.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, but then
geez.
it actually brought more unity because everybody, rallied for each other. So maybe she did it on purpose because everybody stood up and like, she's not like that. He's not like that. You can't say anything mean about cousin Mike. He's like,
I know.
He belongs in the Partridge family. He's like, he's like that.
I like the Partridge family.
Hey, but Julie.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's well, the family. Yeah, it's kind of a quirky, long. Nancy should write a book about.
Oh no, I can't.
The family. No. That's why we're on the road full time. Here's the truth, people. We just want to walk and drink champagne. We're getting far away from it. But Julie, this is the thing. We're laughing about it all, but we all know each other's hot buttons. And how do we where's that? There needs to be a hot button discussion. That should be like how to not do the hot button, because you all know each other's hot buttons, and then you get to that point, and how do you prevent pushing that hot button?
Right. Or do you purposely, push that hot button out of anger or control? And that's the other thing is that like David said, he hates the silent treatment. So, I know that if I want to really piss him off, I won't talk to him. And that hurts more than, yelling, obscenities at him and cuss words. He'd rather have me be yelling at him,
Absolutely.
And telling him that, something awful about himself. But yeah, no, understanding that, I don't know what you can say on this show, but yeah, like what can you say on the show, Nancy and Lisa? Is it edited for any purpose?
You can do whatever you want. This is the beauty of the internet. They're trying to crack down on absolutely everything else, but we stand for free speech. So,
but
okay, so like he'd rather me say he has a small penis than do the silent treatment. Okay,
really?
So he, yeah.
Are you going to do the little
silent treatment?
The little finger. That's what Nancy does.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Are we going to have to mark this as explicit now?
Probably, but if we're sitting at a bar or something, and some guy's like hovering, Nancy just lifts up her right hand and takes her little pinky and goes, little pinky in their face. And that's sorry, David.
Yeah, that's like
thanks for giving her the ideas. I appreciate that. So.
Yeah, I'm going to use that if we're out and I don't like this behavior.
That's Nancy's silent treatment.
It's not. First of all, I want to say that it's not true for David, but that would be the worst.
Thanks for clearing that up. I appreciate
that. This is great.
One of the worst things that you could say to anybody with a penis is that it's small. I guess. So anyway, we've diverted.
No, but
that's why the little pinky works.
That's why the little pinky
I like that.
You don't have to say anything. You just like, here's the little finger.
Yep.
I mean, while we're on the topic, I mean, this was one of the sections of the book that we really come to this from very different places. All the sex discussions and everything that's sort of built in there. It was very so. Here's the funny thing about my wife, right? So we're in a hotel lobby restaurant about a year and a half ago, just getting some coffee and something to eat before we had to head to the airport. And she, as she always does, strikes up a conversation with a couple, and we start talking to them. Julie's always the one that leads in. Otherwise, I'd sit by myself and read my paper. I'm perfectly fine being quiet and being in a corner, but she's social. She starts talking to these folks. We start up a conversation, and it couldn't have been more than 7 to 10 minutes before the husband is asking Julie questions about sex.
Oh boy.
And what do you do if? What do you do when your sex drive is bigger than hers? How do you? And I'm like, okay, I just bought a bagel. Where did it? How did this start? How did this happen? But yeah, I mean, so we have a lot. Yeah, she loves it. She loves it. I'm like, my head's exploding. Okay, I went up to get a bagel, and now you're talking to a stranger about his sex life with his wife, and it was just hysterical. But we do like a lot of couples, frankly, we do come at the sexual relationship from different places, from different feelings, from different all that stuff, which is definitely not unusual in our in the people that I see in my office. I don't think it's unusual with folks that Julie sees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an important conversation, and to balance it out because it is a physical need or non-need, depending on who you are, and I think men always seem to be wanting it more than the women, and then I know some women who are that they want it all day long.
I'm unfortunately not married. I'm not married to one of those, by the way.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we can generalize, and that happens that men have want it, or I think men can see sex in a different way. I think men see it as just as hunger. As you're hungry, you're going to eat. You're horny, you're going to have sex. And I think a lot of times women, and again I'm generalizing, really need to have that connection, the emotional connections, to feel like they want to have sex. I mean, I hear this a lot in my office, and I've experienced this too. That if we haven't had time together, we haven't been connecting, that it's really hard for me to want to have sex. And then that's never really the case for David. He's like all in whenever. Doesn't matter if I talk to him that day or not. For him, it's completely different kind of need. So that does provide a lot of mismatch and some arguments or some hurt feelings along the way. It has for us in our relationship.
And I think it's a conversation thing too, but also again, it's like if you're taking time out for each other and to be together aside of sex, then the sex will probably be closer around the corner from the female perspective.
I think it falls. Yeah, and frankly, I'm not sure I agree with, and we've had this discussion too. I understand that the gender labels, that men want it more, women want it less, but I see that less in the folks, and it's not like everyone comes and complains to me when they're talking about getting divorced about their sex life, but it's a pretty regular conversation. I like to call it one of my big four, one of the four reasons that people have problems or people divorce. And for us, and I always say to Joel, okay, well, it's not a budget item. It's not something that you can only do it this amount of times a month or this amount of times a week. Why do we have to, okay, it was Thursday, why do I have to wait the next Thursday? And for her, but it does come back. I think sometimes it's the connection. And like you said, sometimes it's physically what you need and what you want or what you don't need at a particular time.
Maybe nature planned it this way because nature is nature, and maybe it was a way of having a bit of birth control.
Oh wow!
Could be.
Wow, I just think you should go out in nature and do it. It's a lot more
let's talk
free.
about that.
Yeah, out in nature, go wild, and it's now it's illegal to do that, which
that's not exactly what I meant anyway.
Well, no, I know. I just was like, be free, go run out in the wind, but be free.
Sure.
But one thing in closing, I do want to touch on, parenting 4 daughters, 2 biological, 2 adoptive. I know, from my, one cousin, they adopted a young girl, and the difficulties that arose with that, yet, she's everything to them, absolutely everything to them. And at the same time, she went through a lot because of her biological mother was addicted to crack, and it, she was born with it in her system. And so there was this huge process. And, you talk about, people looking at, your daughters and going, oh, she looks like you, she, all of that. So there's this whole balance of everything. that has to have been like a major ongoing conversation to keep that balance, and like there's just so much that goes with that. It's huge.
Yeah, there was a lot of complexities for us, because our youngest is biological and our oldest is biological, and the two in between were adopted. Our second daughter was a walk in the park, down the middle, did what she was supposed to do, and there. So you had what you're talking about, sort of, more regular kind of things that would like nag at you when you saw people, oh, who does she look like, or who's, and I always, in the back of my head, always felt bad, like, what is this 5-year-old thinking, what's going through her mind, or 12-year-old or 15-year-old or whatever it was. And then, and then for us, then we had the added layer of complexity, both for us as parents, but also for the girls in different ways, so we have a child who is very, very complicated, very, very difficult, with mental illness, behavioral issues, from as long as we could really, once she started developing a personality. So that created conflict both between Julie and I. It created conflict between each of us and this child. And what it also did, and it was harder for us to, I think it was certainly harder for me to get my hands around, or even to notice at the time, was the conflict that it created between her and the 3 siblings. And in a lot of ways, her and the other adopted daughter, who by the way are biological siblings. So going through.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So there was a lot of Julie can talk more about it from a more professional perspective. For me, it was just a lot of layers of how to try to keep your family moving in the right direction, and it was very difficult. It was for us. There was a lot of difficulties, a lot, like I said, a lot of conflict, that if you were drawing, spaghetti strings from one person to the other, there'd be a million of them attached to all of us in different ways.
Yeah. And I think for us, I always tell people we're like a not great science experiment. I mean, like protocol wise, we wouldn't pass any tests, but I do think it's, we have 2 biological kids, 2 adopted kids, and they're, from the same, birth mom and birth father. So what we have though is, one child that was able to sort of accept and take in what we had to offer. And I tell people it's like a paper towel. So our first adopted daughter, was like a bounty paper towel. She was able to absorb all of what we had to offer. And she graduated college. She, did theater. She kind of did what she needed to do. And then the other adopted daughter is more like the CVS brand Teflon sort of coated, not really absorbent. And she was just wired in a way that she wasn't able to take what we had to offer. And so maybe I make up this, metaphor, analogy kind of thing to protect, ourselves and not feeling bad about, what happened with her. But I do feel like I feel very glad and happy in some ways that I've had this experience of having 2 adopted children, and having one sort of fall into place and the other one not, because it's helped me with my work. I do work with adopted folks, adopted families a lot. And it's helped me kind of see, like, yeah, there are some situations where no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to change the situation. And you have to kind of accept that.
Yeah.
And that's where we are with our our third daughter, our second adopted daughter.
Is to not beat yourself up. I think that's the hard thing, because it's it's a parental duty, and I think that there's pressure on you already because of adopting. I think there's like that just immediate added layer of it. And I mean, Nancy, we saw that with Diana,
Right.
That just it's been nonstop, and it's been and her mom is also in the therapy world, and I mean, that was really difficult for her, because she's like, I want to fix everything. That part.
You want to fix everything, and you're supposed to know what to do. And as I'm a therapist in therapy with my kid, and I'm in therapy for myself because of this. And people do kind of you know, look at you like, well, God, you should know what to do. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you know what to do. First of all, there's no perfect parent. And I certainly made my share of mistakes and said and did things I shouldn't have done. But, you know, there is an expectation that, you know, we're supposed to be able to help people. And I went to many school meetings with my daughter, and then I went to many school meetings for my clients. And I was much more effective and successful when I was in with my clients than I was with my own kid. And that was a weird feeling too.
Yeah, mental health, when you have a child with mental health concerns, in some ways, and it's easy for me to say because we didn't raise a kid who needed a wheelchair, who had physical disability, but with that you can see you see that there's something wrong, and people innately are more empathetic, right? You know, whereas you have a kid who's got emotional health or mental health issues, and you don't see it at first, and then when you experience the behavior, you know. And then sometimes I think that we as parents, we felt like we were blamed. People looked at us like we didn't know what we were doing. We couldn't control our own kid. And then you have the other side of it from an emotional roller coaster piece, that when something goes wrong, you know, nobody's really jumping up to support you or that sort of thing. You know, we mentioned this in the book, where there was an incident in our neighborhood where a couple of kids got hurt, and everybody, there was an outpouring of support for this family with bringing them food and helping them with their other child and back and forth. And they lived right across the street, and it was a nonstop, you know, row of cars in and out of their house. And when our kid was hospitalized, everybody knew about it. The joke is, you know, we didn't even get a Happy Meal. Nobody said anything. Nobody came over. Nobody rang the bell.
Yeah.
You know, not as much as a French fry or a chicken nugget kind of a thing. And it was, so there's a lot of parents out there that go through that kind of feeling, and it's hard. It's hard, not just on the individual, but you know, it's hard on you as a couple to deal and manage that kind of thing. And I think that sometimes people pull apart as a result of those sorts of things. And you can take that story and there's a million like it, but different circumstances. And others like Julie and I were able to sort of use that and keep ourselves glued and pulled together.
You have to. Nancy and I have been through a number of lots of things, you know, everything from, you know, standing next to a car that's going to blow up with a bomb in downtown Port Elizabeth, South Africa, to, you know, wildfires, to emotional family stuff that you don't ever want to be part of, you know, and it's there and you have to deal with it. And we had different ways of dealing with it. And I think what I really think is important about what you do in your book is you talk about core conversations, 5 core conversations, but it's about having that dialogue. And I think it's the only way we've managed to be strong is to not quit. One of us at times may want to quit of whatever it is. Go, that's it, you know, throw the towel in. Let that person have their breather. Otherwise, you're going to get silent treatment or emails. Right? But,
that's right.
Yeah, and then it's that consistent dialogue, and it's really that commitment to, okay, we got to get through this. You know, you can't, some things you can't throw the towel in at times. And if you do, it's really bad. And you know, this is people's lives and things. So I think it takes a village, and it's true. And you do have to know who your village are, who support you for what. I think that's important too, to know. You always talk about the, you know, time and energy and how we are in this fast-paced society, addicted to phones and internet, and yes, pornography's in there. There's all of that. But yeah, Julie, I think it's important that you know your village, and you know, so you don't waste time on the negatives. You know what I mean? So that it strengthens you. You know, in whatever you're going on.
And again, as sort of my process is to talk with people, and also I feel as a therapist, I didn't want to hide what was going on with our daughter, because I felt like there's other people out there that, you know, may learn from my story or feel supported by knowing that we're, you know, having trouble over here too. So I was always, you know, a bit outspoken about what we were going through, you know, more so than David was, but that's how I got, you know, how I got support, how I got help. And we've been, you know, lucky with that in terms of our family's been always been great with you know, being able to support us with that. But there are tons of people out there that don't have any support around, you know, the issues with their kids.
Mm. But
you know, people are so complicated as compared to animals, you know. We spend a lot of time observing wildlife, and it is funny, you know, you can have a little spat like in a troop of monkeys or baboons. You can see there's little teenager fights going on in there, but it's quick and over with. I don't know that they do have the silent treatment. I've seen them turn their back on each other. You know,
mostly women.
So, yeah, so I think that they seem to recover faster. They don't harbor grudges, you know, year after year
That's
after year.
because of survival. They have survival of the fittest, you know.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting. We are so much more complicated. And we make things so much more difficult for ourselves with the sometimes we're really reactionary and don't think before we speak, and that gets us in trouble. And sometimes we do the big silent treatment and go hide away and make the other person feel bad, and you know you're making them feel bad.
Or you roll your eyes at the person that.
Oh, I'm really good at that.
Yes, Nancy, the eye roller.
Yeah, that's a great source of power to. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
It can hurt.
Absolutely.
It can hurt.
Yeah.
Oh man, thank you both for joining us. What a good conversation. It's
thanks for having us. It's been great.
A wonderful, wonderful book. Very excited for you guys to have it out. Again, everyone, it's David and Julie Bulitt, and go to thebulletts.com, and that's Bulitts, and it's the 5 core conversations for couples. Go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those places, but also connect definitely with them on their website, social media, and all that good stuff. We want to thank you, audience, for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. We air new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Just go to bigblendradio.com. And then also, we love to play music for our audience, obviously, but also for our guests. And today's song, I just thought this was perfect. It's called Happily Ever After.
Great.
Yeah, it's by a great, amazing vocalist, Billboard charting singer-songwriter Doreen Taylor. She's based out of, she's back east where you guys are in Pennsylvania, but go to her website, everyone. It's DoreenTaylorMusic.com. So here it is, Happily Ever After. Thank you.
Thank you.